Welcome to the FasCat podcast. I'm your host, Frank Overton. Some call me the Big Cat, and I'm always joined by Jackson Long.
Jackson Long
in the house.
Back fresh off of suffering my face off at Rebecca's Private Idaho.
Fantastic. Tell us in your own words. Give us the play-by-play.
Play-by-play. Well, in a nutshell, short story version, I was feeling and doing really well until I wasn't, as usually happens in these things. But yeah, I of course didn't follow my own advice, and I do this every single year, but I go way too hard up the first climb and found myself in like 5th place, 6th place going over the climb. Got into like the front group of, with the Josh Berry and Colin Strickland's.
The big boys.
And I was like, this is awesome. I feel great. And then detonated.
Ooh.
And then basically wrote it in by myself. But it was really hard this year. Rebecca put together, I think she's kind of feeling the pressure from some of these other gravel races that are hard, and like she added a tough little like double track, single track section right at the end after you've already done like 90 miles. It's this like really technical, steep little climb, really technical descent. So just make it hard, which is great. Like I love these hard courses, but I think it was harder than Steamboat in my opinion.
Wow. Did you run into any podcast listeners?
I did. I ran into one podcast listener. I apologize. I forgot your name, but came up to me and said that he came up to me after the race and said that the Breakdown podcast helped him so much for the race.
I wonder if that was Dave Zink. He's a FasCat athlete.
It might have been Dave.
Yeah, because he's asked us about. He was the one that was asking about tire choice and everything. Anyway, hi Dave.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah.
So
we love
if
you haven't figured out, we love when people come up to us and say they love the podcast.
Yeah, it's always like a mini shock, but then it's also really like
it's
cool.
Super fun.
It's like really cool.
Yeah.
So
anyway. This week we are talking about reviewing your season. For most of us, except for the cyclocross community, we're at the end of our season. Pardon the Southern Californians and maybe the Texans who are in the second half of their season, Arizona too. But for the rest of us, we have reached the end of our season, and it's time to take a break, and it's time for some reflection. And if you have some goals for 2020, maybe the 2019 season is too fresh, you don't want to think about it. We're going to give you some things to help you think about and things to ask yourself, data to review, questions to ponder about what went right and what went wrong with your season.
Yeah. I mean, the off season isn't just a time to physically rest, but it's also a time to mentally, kind of hit reset and start. I mean, obviously you want to give yourself a little bit of like full reset time of not thinking about bikes, but it gives you a time to sort of reflect and look back and then use that data, both quantitatively and qualitatively to prepare for the next season. And that's a super important thing. And it's very easy to just let this time of year slip by. And then, pretty soon it's training time. And you're like, what am I even doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, guaranteed Alaphilippe is putting his performance team together, and they're coming up with a way for him to win the Tour de France next year.
Well, isn't he trying to probably win Worlds right now?
Probably.
Maybe.
I don't stalk him like maybe the rest of us, but guaranteed they are going to go through, what led to his really good performance and what led to him losing the jersey on that final day. And that's what we're going to go through with you.
Yeah, that's key.
That's key. Well, before we get into that, I would just like to say this podcast is brought to you by FasCat Coaching.
Wow, great website.
You can use 25 podcasts for 25% off any of the training plans on our website. They embody everything that we talk about in this podcast, all of our coaching and training philosophy. They are 6 weeks, $49, 100% money back guarantee. You get a free 30-day Training Peaks premium account, a 60-day Yoga Glow membership, so you have no excuse, and you get an invitation to our private forum. And that's where I think is the real value, because we have a good community over there that asks lots of questions. And I myself and Coach Jake and Isaiah and Brandon, Jackson, we all participate and try to help you get faster. So give us a try. 25 podcasts gets you 25% off. So those $49 training plans become $36.75.
Not a bad deal.
Thank you. Okay, now, review of the week comes from Whit Robinson of, I think Whit is from Texas, and he did the road intervals plan and says, as much as I want to keep FasCat coaching my little secret, I can't help telling my bros how great it is. Thanks again, Frank and crew. Plan number 3 is in the books. States, here I come. Right on. Well, congrats on FTFPing, and hope you slay the podium at States.
Yeah, friends don't let friends not FTFP.
That's it. We should make a t-shirt.
We should make another t-shirt.
That one was so short. Let's read another one. I'll let Jackson read this. And this is from Matt Ogle, who we know him from the Boulder cycling community, and he got on our plans. And I'll just let Jackson read this.
All right. It says, just finished a great mountain bike racing season thanks to FasCat. I managed to finish 15th in the 12 hours of E-Rock, 8th in the Firecracker 50 after DNFing last year, and 1st in the 12 hours of Winter Park. Hell yeah. I used MTB Sweet Spot at the beginning and end of the season with 6 weeks of mountain bike intervals in between. First ever podium in 27 years.
Damn.
Thanks, Frank / FasCat. Thank you.
Nice work, Matt.
That's great. Amazing.
And Matt has been posting daily pictures on the interwebs of 5 days to go till cyclocross season, 4 days to go.
Oh, wow.
He's got all his equipment laid out. So we will see you at Harlow Platts this weekend. FasCat and myself, we're going to have a expo tent out there. And if you're curious about training plans, come on over to the booth. I'm going to have the big screen up, and we'll be able to show you the plans in Training Peaks on the big monitors, and there'll be a chance to win a free training plan while you're there.
Sweet. I can't believe cyclocross is already here. I can't imagine. I mean, that's why I never do it, because I just can't imagine. I'm like, so.
You would be good to do cross in like November.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be like, I need like a full month off. Because Rebecca's, I mean, a lot of these gravel races, are late. And so it's like you need some time off, but maybe one day.
It took me about 10 days to recover from Steamboat. Yeah. I was shellacked the week after. As I look back on it now, it's hard to when you're in it, but man, was I wrecked. Yeah. So you're probably double wrecked. Although you're much younger, so you bounce back quicker.
Yeah, that's true. I'm double wrecked.
Okay, so reviewing your season. What are we talking about?
We got to mention this. I almost forgot.
This is the most important thing
of the intro. Yeah. Podcast appreciation ride.
Yes.
This weekend, Sunday.
We come on over, everyone, 9 a.m. this Sunday, 3107 Bluff Street. That's in the Steel Yards. Look for a bunch of other bikers out front. There is not much parking, so ride over if you can. If you must drive from like Denver or Longmont, you can use the city parking. There is paid parking, of course. And we're just going to take a nice, fun, casual ride up to Jamestown. It's road and gravel bike friendly.
I'll be on my gravel bike.
I'll be on my only bike.
Me too.
And we're going to have coffee, and I think we'll go to Spruce Confections, get some pastries, and to visit with you all. And, I think that's going to be about a 2-hour-ish ride. Casual. We're not going to be hammering or anything like that. I would love it if everyone would come on over and join us.
Yeah, obviously if you're in the Boulder or the Front Range area, but
if you want to fly in for this, that's fine too.
Hey, whatever you want. But 9 a.m. Hope to see some of you there. It'll be fun.
Awesome. Okay, now let's get
ready
to the main course. Reviewing your season and then using that to set goals for 2020. You don't want to just review your season to review it, although that is helpful. But the second part of this podcast will be what to do with that review, and that is how to set goals for 2020. And we may allude to that a little bit as we go forward in this part one podcast. And so just know that. And when I think of reviewing your season, I think of 4 things, and they are your training volume. We talk a lot about CTL, chronic training load, your intervals, and then your power output. You know, you can set up a mean maximal power chart in WKO and look at like when you were making your best like sprint, 1 minute, 5 minute, 20 minute, you know, what your FTP was doing over the course of the season, you know, when you were on form, when you weren't on form. That's all related to your training. Okay. And that's part 1. And then part 2, I think, is your nutrition. What went well? What did not? Did you win in the kitchen for a portion of the podcast, for a portion of the season? You know, did you lose weight? Did you not lose weight? I think what a lot of guys and gals get in trouble with is we get to the springtime, April, May, and we get super motivated, and then you want to start winning in the kitchen to lose weight. And so it becomes like your collegiate exams, you're cramming.
Right. You're trying to lose weight and perform at the same time, which is basically impossible.
So Cliff Notes, right now is the time to change your body comp. From now through Thanksgiving, look at it as part 1. Maybe take a break in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, unless you're a professional, and then pick back up with the second half, January through March.
Yeah.
For example,
I highly recommend going back and listening to, I think, our second ever podcast,
Winning in the Kitchen.
It's one of our, I think it is our most popular episode. Great episode, great content in there that I think it's always good to like just hit refresh on that kind of stuff so that you can at least have it in your mind as you're, I mean, obviously enjoy your off season a little bit, but start thinking about it. Don't wait till the last minute.
Yeah. And you know, really, you don't wait until January to start, you know, trying to lose some weight. You got to, it really helps to kick it off now.
Yeah.
And so part 1, part 2, your training, your nutrition, because when you get done with any race, every single race I did this year, it's like, what could I have done better? Train more, weigh less. Power to weight ratio. So that's your first 2 things, and we'll get into those in more detail. Third thing that we'll talk about that should not be forgotten is your skills. Cycling is a skill-based sport, and we all can stand to improve our skills. And I, as a coach, a lot of times when I'm prescribing training plans and monitoring athletes' power output, and then I hear what happens in the race, it's evident that this is not a power production challenge. It's skill-based, and so we'll talk about that. And
for example, me getting dropped at Steamboat Gravel on the descent.
That's right. Yeah, precisely. Gravel racers, if you're pulling on the brakes on the descents too much, let's work on your descending skills. Yeah, and there's a variety of ways to go about that, and we'll get into that. And one of the biggest things I see these days with the rise of Zwift is people are not doing enough group rides outside, working on their pack positioning, drafting,
efficiency in the group,
maneuverability.
Yeah.
You know, knowing when to move up. But you know, how to hit that last lap of a criterium and be able to position yourself so you do get a good results. Things like that. We'll get into that. Mountain biking, obviously, descending, technical terrain, you know, are you crashing, things like that. And then we will finish with the fourth part of this podcast. We'll talk about the 4 training ideas to get faster for 2020. You take 1, 2, and 3, and then you begin to formulate a game plan for what you're going to do to make it better next year.
Cool.
All right.
Let's hit it.
Okay. When there's a variety of ways to approach your season, I think you want to look at it as a whole and say what went right, what went wrong. Everyone has things that went right, and everyone has things that went wrong. Even Alaphilippe, you know, it was probably private. He didn't maybe talk about it, but he obviously did a lot of right, and I guarantee you he probably had some challenges that he overcame along the way. So the biggest thing I think you want to look at is for you guys out there in podcast land is, did you train enough, and could you have trained more? And we'll get into that with this is my performance manager chart, and I'll allude to that. Because again, when you get done with these long, hard, any race, whether it's Masters, Nationals, or the state championships, it's what could you have done better? Train more, way less.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that.
And train smarter.
Train smarter. Yes. Yeah. Efficiency.
Yeah.
You know, did you do too much base and not enough intervals? Did you do too many intervals and you didn't have a good base? You know, did you do too many 2x20s when you should have been doing 30-second anaerobic output specific to, you know, the races that you were doing? You can be, when you look at training peaks, you can even do this in Strava. Strava will tell you there's the really nice summary, like how many miles you've ridden, how many feet you've climbed, how much time you've been riding. I mean, look at that for 2019 compared to 2017. You know, is it more or less? 2019. And, you know, did you train more in 2019 than you did in 2018? If you did, I bet you had a better season. If you did not, I bet you didn't have as good of a season. And if you want to do better in 2020, then you probably want to ride more. As a whole, I think the more you train, probably the better you'll perform to a certain limit that only the professionals get up to. For most Masters athletes, I know that generally the more that you can carve out of training time, probably the more you can improve.
Right, because I think the pro guys, you know, they have a massive volume. I mean, they do so. I mean, obviously it's their job, so they have time, but they're doing huge amount of riding, just miles. And then they get their race intensity or their intensity from racing, and so you know, there's a reason why they're doing that. There's a reason why they're putting in a lot of miles. You know, building that aerobic base is critical.
That's right. Yeah. So it's like, you know, look back at your, you know, how much time you were able to train November through March. And was it a lot? Did you do great? Did you do really nice and consistent? Or did you pick up your training in April and have you were really good from April on, but then maybe that means you just can be better if you get started earlier.
Yeah.
So Strava can summarize it really well. Training Peaks can summarize it even better in just quantifying your total hours. The performance manager chart, which for the video watchers that we have here, we can just get into that. This chart epitomizes a picture is worth 10,000 words, and this graph is worth 10,000 words. And I can break it down for you guys, but for the video listeners that are following along, you know, this is December 1st, 2018. That's essentially when I was lifting weights. And then this is this is Steamboat Gravel. This is my last race of the season. And you can tell I really haven't been doing much since then. And let me walk you through like the big life events. But I'm going to scroll forward to... oh no, go to the right. Okay, yeah, here we are. All right, this is a graph is worth 10,000 words. And if you look over here on the far left, and this is December. Over here, I'm lifting weights, I'm going to the gym, it's winter time, I'm not riding that much intentionally. Doing the hypertrophy phase over here, not trying to, ride too much. Again, this is like right before Christmas, and then this is went to visit family from Christmas through New Year's, so your training declines a little bit, and then you come back first of the new year, and
you're all motivated, amped.
And so you do a bunch of good training, and I keep doing good training. And then if you remember I don't know what podcast that was when we talked about the do-it-yourself personal training camp. This is my Mill Valley, California training camp, that bolus dose of training with Dr. Nathan and the Oklahoma boys.
That brought your CTL up nicely.
Yeah, CTL came up to about almost 70 there. And then I came back to Boulder and we had a crappy winter.
Terrible.
And as you see, my CTL actually went down. One of the things that limited me that I'll mention, we were selling my house, and what would happen on a typical Saturday, the realtor would call, say you got a showing today, and then we'd have to clean it up, get all the pets out, and that puts a dampen on your 3 and 4 hour ride that day. So I was struggling to get in some good training volume. And the master plan was sell the house as soon as possible and be done with it. And it just dragged on. And we'll get into that because it affected me all the way up until July. Nevertheless, I stayed consistent, and I didn't, give up or anything, but it did inhibit the build. But then I went on spring break, and you can see, got all the way up to 80. That was awesome. Came back, took some rest. I did, I think the Boulder Roubaix was actually here. I put here actually, I did a bike race here the first weekend in April. Had a bad crash.
Broke your bike.
Broke the bike. So that's a week off.
Yeah.
Not only did I need to take it to heal up, but it took me a while to get the bike built back up. So that, that decreases the old CTL. Almost like I erased about half of what I did on spring break. That was a bummer. But anyway, the weather was still pretty choppy in April. And I was doing some big weekends, and I would have to recover on the weekend. And then remember we did the Oat Route Asheville that we podcasted about, and was like my short range goal, and that's kind of what kept me motivated to ride in the slush and the snow in April. And then this is a good example. You see your CTL go up from the Oat Route Asheville, and that's a good example of like stage race CTL. You go do a 3-day stage race with a bunch of 300 TSS stages, and it does really good for your CTL. Came back. The house is still not sold yet. We're doing showings. It's a pain in the butt. We finally go under contract here in June, but the place that I was buying was not ready yet.
Yeah.
So this is what I mean, life stuff.
Happens to the best of us.
The original plan when we hatched the idea way back in January is we move in April 30th. And that was like going to be perfect for the Oat Route Asheville. Move in, do the Oat Route Asheville, come back, train your brains off for the Crusher and Steamboat. What happened here is I had to move out of my house, and I didn't have anywhere to live. And while we're waiting for the new place to be ready, we're literally in a van down by the river. And there was, the pets were the hardest part to, to find a place for them to live. So that's why you see the CTL go down. In about second week of June, I realized the Crusher just wasn't going to be possible. And I'm sorry I'm giving you all my life story, but these are things that you think about. It's
good to reflect back on.
When you review, it's like, if you want to do better, don't sell your house, don't crash. If you look back at this winter, hard terrain time, I need to develop a better man cave and have a contingency plan of what to do in the event that you're inside. And of course, I won't be showing my house, so I'm looking forward to that. And then after everything settled down with all the life stuff, July the 1st, I pulled the trigger on the Steamboat gravel plan, and then this was like awesome. Yeah. This is really good,
We had great weather.
Great, it's summertime. Yeah, riding in the morning. And you can see I got my CTL all the way up to 90. This was the Steamboat gravel recon ride I did with Ken and Mark, and that we podcasted about. And then after that, I was doing some interval work. So everything from July 1st went according to plan. And so when I look at my performance manager chart before July 1st, there's a lot I can improve upon. And so, yeah, but the biggest thing is no crash. And spring break was awesome. Mill Valley was awesome. Oat Root was awesome. So, when you think about 2020, you want to keep what worked and discard what didn't.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you have a similar life story. You can,
I won't bore you guys too much.
So use your performance manager chart and select the whole year view and go back and just walk through it, and I'm sure everyone's got a story of this and that because it's life. And, even the pro guys have this stuff.
And maybe, you did a couple races that you feel like you don't want to do again, or that you are like, okay, I'm going to target that for like next year, make that my target thing. Like, I did Steamboat Gravel and like I signed up on a whim because it was first year, but like had a great time. I mean, this is like kind of what I'm thinking. It's like, I kind of want to go back to Crusher next year, but I think like Steamboat Gravel, it's like cool because now we know the course, we've done it. Now it's a good event to like have as your main target to kind of build up to and have that be the main focus. And maybe I won't do Rebecca's, or I don't know. Like it's good to look at the races too, to sort of like, again, I mean, that's a huge way to plan your season.
I think what you're talking about or alluding to is you want to choose events that suit your strengths. And so like if you're not a climber, probably don't make the Crusher your A race because it's a climber's race. If you're known to not be good at altitude, if you've raced at altitude before and you could really feel the lack of oxygen, then you may not want to choose an event at altitude. Like Masters Nationals was at altitude this year in Colorado Springs, and I know the Colorado guys and gals did really well because it's our hometown race. We're acclimated, but the people that came in from sea level, they didn't do so hot. And so, factor that in when you're choosing your event. Hopefully Masters Nationals not at altitude next year.
Yeah.
But you never know. And I think also, to like your point, it's like what race did you do the best at? When were you the most on form? You can go back through this and then you can start looking at like your training stress balance and when were you on form. Like I felt like I was going pretty good in April, everything was going good until that crash. And so I was, everything was, even though I'd had a crappy winter and everything, I was still pretty pumped up. But then I think everyone, maybe you got sick. That's what happens a lot. People get sick, like the flu, and it's a week off, and it seems like you're just kind of crawling back out of it for a period of time. So you want to look at that. Sometimes people get knee problems, like overuse injuries. Right. Andy Pruitt calls it spring knee. Everyone, the weather gets better in March and April, and they start riding more, and they crop up with that overuse injury. Did that happen? If so, go get a bike fit. Go dial that in. I consider bike fits preventative medicine. And the other thing is don't change much equipment once the season begins. And right now that we're in September, October, this is where you change equipment. If you have an injury and it needs, you need a procedure done, now's the time to get it. Don't wait until next March when taking a week off will have a much greater impact.
Maybe go see a PT or something, get your stuff sorted out so that you can start working on that so that you're not waiting until the season starts and you're still dealing with it.
Yeah. Okay. We talked about bike fit, races, data driven. I mean, we just went through was your FTP higher in the spring than it was in the summer? Take a look at what was going on there. Most guys and gals, their FTP tends to go up and it follows along with their just riding more. And, but some people come out of the winter super hot, really on form, and then they may just do a slow fade as the summer goes on. You might want to take a look at what was happening there. Did you the biggest thing is like, did you accomplish your goals? You know, did you miss your goals? Did you miss your goal, but you were still encouraged by the progress you made? All good questions to ask.
Yeah, I think it's hard sometimes too, like, especially for those of us doing the gravel stuff, to, you know, it's just gotten so competitive now that sometimes goals might not be, like, you might also want to like reassess your goals. Like if you're like, oh, I want a podium at the Crusher or a podium at Steamboat Gravel, but then you get there and you're like, who are all these people that are just so fast? Like it's, but did you feel good? Did you feel like you were in the mix? Like, were you happy with your performance separate from the result? Because a lot of times, you know, the ebb and flow of cycling, you know, different people come in and out of the woodwork, and it can be hard to, like, if you're just focusing so much on results, then it's hard to like decide if you actually met your goal, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is where power data is so beneficial because you can look at your personal improvement independent of the competition, which you don't have any control over. And then, you know, Strava PRs are not bad.
Right.
You know, I have an athlete right now. He is PRing on all his climbs, but he's having power meter drama, and it's just completely wackadoo. But at the bottom line, he's climbing faster than he ever has before, and that's kind of the bottom line.
Yeah.
So, you know, you could take a look at that. And then, I know the point I was going to make. I have an athlete. He is doing the Pisgah Monster Cross 2 days from now. For all of those of you who don't know, it's a killer gravel race in Brevard, North Carolina, or at least in the western North Carolina mountains. And it's in the woods, and it's a hard race. They're going to do a ton of climbing. And he's done it before. His goal this year is to just finish, because last year he did not. And then the other goal that we just talked about yesterday was, you know, this is going to be a big accomplishment for him to finish. And it's like, you know, don't let what's happening with the other people in the competition. Really, you're kind of racing the course. Yeah. That's what happens in these gravel races. You're really racing the terrain and yourself. And yeah, there's people all around you and everything, but once you get, like, you know, 6 hours in, everyone's in the same boat, and it kind of becomes just you against almost like yourself in the terrain. So his goal is to kind of like let the fact that who's beaten him or who he's beaten go and just have a good personal race. Right. So I think that's a good goal. And then, so now that you've dove into your data, you've figured out you didn't train enough, and this time, that time, you went through your PMC, you identified all that, you know, now this gets to the second part of the power to weight ratio, winning in the kitchen, and how much you weighed. Because, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, what can you do better? Train more, weigh less. Yeah. You know, and train more means, when I say that, I mean make more power, make more race-specific power. Like,
not just riding.
Right. Yeah, more power. Yeah. Like when I got done with the O-Route Asheville, it was easy. I need to train more and weigh less. Yeah. I mean, you know, that was kind of, for us in Colorado, that was coming off of the winter. Yeah. And speaking of choosing races, and this goes back to the podcast we did last October of choosing races for the next year. You want to choose races that fit in with your seasons. Yeah. We're, you know, here in Colorado, a lot of people don't be choosing the Valley of the Sun February for your A race, because that means you need to be riding in the freezing cold and rain all through the holidays. And that's tough living in Colorado. But if you live in California or Arizona, that's a pretty good goal. Yeah. Okay. We kind of really hit it, but the weight loss, and now is the time just to kind of clean everything up in the kitchen. Yeah.
Do it right, and do sustainable weight loss, you know, not some yo-yo diet. And because now we have a lot of time between right now and, you know, your first race of the season next year. So you have some time to kind of slowly and effectively adjust that body comp and get to your target weight, and so that you're not waiting, like you said, to cram for the exam and restrict, and then your performance suffers anyway, and that doesn't matter how light you are because you're getting dropped everywhere.
Because you get
no dropped power before the climb, you know,
Also, you know, for training right now, most people should be taking a break. So you got all this time on your hands.
Right.
What do you do with that time on your hands?
Learn how to cook.
Learn how to cook. Get in the kitchen. Go to the grocery store. You know, one of our training plan athletes was asking the other day, what's the best meal delivery service? And I'm like, no.
The one that you go to the store and deliver your groceries to your house.
Yeah. You really got to do it yourself. If you're going to own it and really get conscious of your nutrition, I really think you got to go buy the food yourself and cook it yourself. And so a lot of guys that I have this conversation with, they're like, all right, I'll tell my wife. I'm like, no,
doesn't work like that.
You know what would be probably even good for your cycling is if you did the cooking and let her not cook and then
pay it forward.
Yeah. And then I hope this doesn't come off as sexist, but happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
Good teammate told me that once. So, you know, now, and this, we talk about life balance and taking a break. Now is like when you may put more effort back into your family, your relationship, cooking.
Yeah, learn a few staple meals that you develop that you have dialed. You don't even have to think about, so that when it comes time for the season, that's just a brainless automatic procedure. So that you just you gain those skills now, so that you can focus that energy when it comes time for the work.
That's right. You know, one of my biggest tips is get yourself a killer set of Tupperware.
Yeah.
And the reason being, because a lot of guys and gals do well at home, but when they go to work, then it's what we call losing in the break room. Because I just got a picture from an athlete in Mobile, Alabama, and he sends me a picture of the break room, and it's horrible.
Donuts and Coke. And
oh, man. I think it was Chick-fil-A fried chicken, mac and cheese, and giant chocolate chip cookies. Sorry, Phil. But and it was funny. He sent me a picture. He's like, this is what I'm up against.
Yeah.
But
if you come prepared,
that's right.
You make your brown rice and your lentils and your cooked broccoli at the beginning of the week, so you just have it ready to go.
Yeah.
It's just as easy as stopping by Chick-fil-A.
That's right. And just ask yourself, what would Alaphilippe do if he worked at a company? He would have a killer set of Tupperware. Yeah. So, just make one change per week. And we probably should do a podcast on snacks.
Yeah.
Because snacks are where a lot of people, get derailed and, succumb to the losing in the break room and stuff like that. But in actuality, I think the snacks are really easy. I'm a big fan of almonds and fruit.
Yeah.
Portable, and you don't need to refrigerate them. And, Yeah. So without going into that, now is kind of the time just to change some habits. And they say it takes 30 days to make what is the expression? It takes 30 days to make to change your habits of daily practice.
It's something like 29 days or something like that. But I mean,
I think that's where the Whole 30 challenge comes in. They want you to, clean up your diet for 30 days.
There's this book I've been wanting to read called Atomic Habits. Have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
I guess it's kind of popular, but it's about habit change. It's, I think you gotta stick with it, even if it's super hard. But once you get it established, then that's where it's at.
That's right. So, okay. Well, we don't want to beat a dead horse with the winning in the kitchen. You know what you got to do. And
go back and listen to our episode.
Yep. Winning in the kitchen. We did summertime nutrition. I think there's a few other.
Weight loss for cyclists.
Weight loss for cyclists. Yeah. All right.
Skills.
Okay, skills. Oh, gosh, yes. This is a biggie because, you can go out and do an interval workout. You can, do training that has almost an immediate impact upon your racing. Skills needs to be developed, and it takes time. And this gets back to 10,000 hours and just repetitions. And so the kind of skills I'm talking about, by and large, most endurance racers, with the exception of time trialists, you're going to be riding in a pack. And the biggest thing I see is your Peloton skills. Not talking about Peloton the bike, because that's what messes up your skills. But less time on Zwift, more time hitting the Saturday group ride, and so more group rides, folks. Like even Dirk last week on the podcast was talking about how he did Wednesday Night Worlds like every week for like 6 years in a row. And in the podcast, he talks about how he figured out where to be and when. And I can attest to his skill in that. When we would do criteriums, him off the couch, he could sniff out the break and he'd be the last one to make it. And it goes to his adage, do the least amount of work to either get in the move or, achieve that training. Yeah. So for criterium racers, I'll just break it down. Criterium racers need to learn how to draft, and they need to learn how to corner. And those are the two biggest skills. And really, you can't practice that on Zwift. You can't practice that by yourself. Get out there on your team rides, your group rides. This is why group rides are a big part of like what we advocate as coaches and on our training plans.
A Zwift group ride is not anywhere.
Does not count.
Does not count. Don't it's a great tool, but don't buy into the hype so much that you lose the skills and that you just become a gamer cyclist.
A gamer. Yeah.
Because it's totally different. It's a totally different thing.
Right.
So.
When Tom Zerbel was coming up and I was coaching him, he turned pro on a Cat 4 pack skills, and because he was a really good time trialist. I mean, that was super evident. But when he got into the road races, homeboy would ride on the side of the Peloton out so he didn't have to draft because he was scared of crashing. Yeah. And he was so strong, he could do that for a 3-hour road race, but he was at the back suffering like a dog, where everyone else is like, they're going to light it up in the last 5K, and he's been lighting it up.
Yeah.
So, and he got better at it as he developed in his career. But, the biggest, like if you're going to want to do well in criteriums, do the training, but you got to be good at cornering and drafting and then maneuvering around, and that group rides. So that's one of the things. Do more group rides if you didn't do enough. Yeah. Some people do too many group rides, and they don't do enough intervals or base. 1 to 2 group rides a week is about right. Don't do 5. Yeah. Okay, road racers. Similar to criterium racers, descending is kind of a thing for road racers. So make sure you're doing plenty of that. We in Colorado are blessed with good road descent, so we take it for granted. But someone from Texas that travels to a different race, they don't have descent, so that's a thing. Yeah,
descending and cornering in the wet or the rain or weather. Drafting, of course, and just the skills of conserving energy in the pack and efficiency is huge. Yeah,
I see a lot of road racers. They're so strong and they're impatient, and the race gets started and they just want to go out and try to win it right there. Yeah. And really. The older road racers are the ones that are often more savvy and clever, and they're going to let the young bucks, the strong dudes, go out there and just spin their matches, and then in the last half hour of the race, when they've been conserving their energy. And so that's something to work on in the group rides as well. Just practicing attacking and conserving energy. You can do this with your power data. You can do a road ride where you're drafting the whole time, and 1 week go out and just try to achieve maximum TSS, like blow your brains out, finish completely spent, maybe even get dropped. But then the next week, go back and do that same ride and try to do as little as possible, drafting, not pedaling, call that 0 time, and look at the difference in your power data. And then also notice how you felt at the end of each ride. And that's a good exercise to do, but you got to get out on a group ride. Time trialists, it's a good one. So, time trialists, everyone thinks it's a non-skill-based discipline. And yeah, it is, but there's nuances to time trialing. And, every single Tour de France time trialist or rider right now, that's an important part of stage racing. They're looking at how they can improve their time. Increasing your power output is the no-brainer. Everyone wants to do that, but you kind of hit a point of diminishing returns. You've already got good power output. It's like, where else can you, shave off 20 seconds, for example? And, the biggest thing is get into a wind tunnel, optimize your aerodynamic position. Some
Being
people
able to put power down under the super tight time trial position, I think, is a skill in and of itself.
Yeah. You got to practice making power.
Warm-up routine, I think, is a skill. Developing your best warm-up routine, to maximize your progression through those zones into the race.
Yeah.
Key.
And most time trialists have done time trials throughout the season, and so you got to really get data set. And you can ask yourself, when was I going the fastest? When was I not on form? When did I have my best TT? When was my worst? Go back and look at your data. Was it at the right time of the year in relation to the goals that I wanted? And then you can use that to shape your training for 2020.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing for time trialists is, there's kind of a joke, like you can buy speed, and it's pretty true. Maybe you've already bought speed, and maybe you've already gone to the wind tunnel. Then you just got to keep doing what you're doing. But if you haven't been to a wind tunnel, that's buying 20 to 30 seconds at the minimum for, let's say, for like a 40K. So, that's a thing. But most Tour de France riders, you see like the things like that Specialized does, and they're optimizing their position. One thing with time trialists though is cornering, because everyone's used to going in a straight line, but a lot of time trials have a 180, or if you're lucky to do like a really dynamic course, it could be pitchy, and sometimes time trialists need to work on their anaerobic power to carry their momentum up over the short hills, or just carrying their speed through corners, because those time trial bikes don't corner that well. Yeah. So you have to practice. Mountain bikers.
Oh yeah.
Descending is probably the lowest hanging fruit. It's like, work on your descending. And how are you going to do that? Well, the easiest way is to go out and just descend more. If you really want to get into it, you can use Strava on the downhill and time yourself on various segments and work on, improving your time. Skills coaches, mountain bike skills coaches are a thing. And I know that Miles Rockwell here in town works with like Aaron Huck and some other mountain bikers that are really addressing that aspect of their training. Miles, I think it's Ride with Rockwell. Something. He's got a website. Just Google Miles Rockwell. He won the World Championships in 2000. Downhill champion. Really good skills coach. Can really show you how proper line choice, body positioning. I think we've referenced this on the podcast before. You got to dance with the trail. Yeah. And that's what he taught me. And, using your elbows and your knees and your hips as shock absorbers to kind of smooth out the trail. Really good, but you can work on it on your own. Yeah.
Yeah, huge.
And then Jackson and gravel racing. Gravel racing takes a lot of skills from road. And the biggest one, drafting and being able to ride in a pack.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this at Steamboat. We've seen this at a lot of races, is that a lot of people that may not have an extensive road background that get into gravel, they aren't as comfortable riding in a pack, and so it throws off the group dynamics of being in a group. But then vice versa, also a lot of the roadies like myself that come from basically a pure road background come to the gravel scene. We don't really know how to descend or break in corners and, kind of ride a lot of the rougher stuff. So it's an interesting discipline because it does take a lot of the skills of cross and mountain bike with the road stuff as well. So it's huge. Yeah, huge. And, that's why, Ted King was kind of my dark horse pick for Steamboat. He's got the road skills and the savvy. And I just listened to his podcast that he put out, I think it was this week, and he kind of gave it like the 2-minute rundown of how the race went down.
and he talked about how he was letting it become a race of attrition and being super duper patient and not showing his cards till mile 100 and letting all the other people, maybe race a little bit too aggressive. So, and then I think you had trouble, what was it, like mile 60 through 80-ish when we were doing those really fast, chunky descents?
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble there. I kept getting gapped off the group, and finally they just rode away because I just didn't know how to like send it. Like I was like, I just didn't, I was like, how are they going so fast? Like, I feel like I'm already going so fast. And if I go faster, I'm going to slide out and crash. So maybe it was a tire choice issue. I don't know. But I think again, equipment's huge in terms of skills, but also just practicing, going out here in Boulder, going and riding Switzerland Trail or going and riding, some of these gnarlier.
I think coming down Sunshine is a good skill-based activity.
Yeah, doing those corners, it's a little loose. There's some washboards. And just like the skills of like Rebecca's was a totally different race because the road surface was so different. It's so rocky and hard and really rough washboards. So the skills of like being able to stay in the group and stay loose so you're not just like stiffening up and getting tired that way is also another important thing.
Flap your arms like a chicken.
Yeah.
It's one of the tips, like to stay loose. Don't because like you
clench.
Can clinch.
Yeah, I was like my back and shoulders were so sore after that.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
And I would even flap my arms like a chicken to remind myself. But the gravel's kind of cool like that. I take it for granted because I come from a mountain biking and cyclocross background. Road too, so I use all three in my gravel racing. But when I coach a lot of new gravel racers, one of the things that we have to do is we have to get them out on more group rides because you got to work on your pack riding skills. And it's especially important in that first hour of the gravel racing where, you got to suck wheel and draft and go with that group. They're going to take you further up the road. But if you start a 5-hour gravel race by yourself, not in the pack, that's essentially you're doing a 5-hour, solo effort. So
when you're looking back at your season, think about some of the races where maybe you didn't have as good of a race or, in a mountain bike race, road race, whatever it may be, try and think back on those sections or those moments during the race where you feel like skills were the rate limiting factor, and then work specifically on those skills, because then coming into that race next year, the course, exactly what to do. You're going to have a much better experience.
That's right. And, a great time to work on your skills in the off season. And we're talking September and October, and, go out on that group ride and throw down and draft, go do that technical descent. Mountain bikers absolutely need to practice. Like even the gravel racers, like go out and do those, hang out with the roadies.
Yeah.
And the roadies have got that kind of dialed. And I do a lot of road rides or with like roadie style road rides, and it helps out tremendously.
Yep.
Okay. So the fourth part is, now that we've just talked about your training and your body composition, winning in the kitchen, and now your skills, now I want to give you 4 training ideas to make your 2020 better, because these are the 4 things that I see working with athletes and reviewing their seasons with them. Like right now, me as a coach, I'm reviewing this season with all my athletes. We're talking about all this stuff, what went right, what went wrong, etc. And of course, my job as a coach is to present to them ways to get faster in 2020. So the number one thing I see, especially with masters athletes, is they take too much time off in the off season. It's really easy to do because you've just spent the last 6 months, for example, riding a lot, and then now you take a break, but you need to shift back to working a lot, kids, things. And this goes back to our life balance. And really, if you want to have a sustainable masters racing career, you need to have a sustainable training regimen, or just your training needs to be
throughout the year.
Yeah. And for the guys that take from now through January 1st off, the joke is they get slow and fat. Well, you're going to spend the first 4 months of 2020 getting unslow and unfat, and you'll be lucky to get back to that same level. And especially with age-related decline in performance, that's the other joke is like, you never get any faster. And the reason why is you took too long of a break. Of course, we advocate 2-week break, completely off the bike, completely unwind, do nothing. It's like cleaning the chalkboard in school, clean slate, ready to go. And it's not like you have to like do a ton of training in the fall, but you do need to be consistent and deliberate and do it in a sustainable way. So there's that. Number 2 way to get faster. This sounds like The Price is Right or something. Number 2 way to get faster is to lift weights in the off season. Everyone, they do a big base, you do a ton of intervals, and they're wondering why, they have the same season this year as they did the year before and the year before. And, lifting weights, build some muscle, teach that muscle how to produce more power. That is a no-brainer for masters athletes. And that's what you want to be doing October, November. And I'm not talking about, core work. I'm talking about squats, leg press, leg curl, moving some weight, like a lot of weight, like getting sore, working hard, going through a cycling specific program. In the podcast, on a lot of our Q&As, people ask us about, should you lift weights year round? And the answer is no. But now is the time to get in the gym and move some weight. Yeah,
and do it right, and like in quality over quantity. So in that period of time when you're doing it, go super deep, go hard, make that your main focus, and it's going to pay off in a huge amount in the season.
Yeah. To kind of oversimplify this, muscle helps, you make power from muscle. So weights put more muscle on your bones, and then you're going to, teach that muscle to help you make more power. So there's a lot in the literature out there. We won't get into it, but I think most coaches these days do advocate weightlifting when it's right for the athlete. I mean, if you got a bad knee or bad back, you may not be a candidate, but if you are, it is one of the best ways to take it up a level in 2020.
And in terms of body composition, I mean, making more lean body mass, taking off some of that body fat, making more metabolically active tissues for developing more mitochondria and all the nerdy stuff that we talk about for being a good endurance athlete. We're not talking about becoming a power lifter and getting massive,
no bench presses, unless you're K-Dog.
Exactly. But if you're doing, squats and deadlifts and leg extensions and all these things that are in this program, it's not like you're going to get these massive, Arnold Schwarzenegger size quads. It's about making them more effective as a machine for working as a cyclist. And so I think a lot of cyclists worry, and we talked about this in our weightlifting podcast, worry about putting on too much weight. But again, you're really just shifting that composition from, fat, which is not really a metabolically active tissue. It's just adding extra weight to using, changing that weight into, muscle, and so that you can produce more power on the bike.
Absolutely. In addition to squats, leg press, leg curl, I highly advocate yoga. It helps you become more well-rounded as an athlete. One thing about cycling is we're really good at, single, plane movement, but, you ask us to do anything else and we're horrible at it. Yoga helps round you out. It'll help you become more flexible. If you have a hard time making power down in your aerodynamic position for time trialing, you probably need to stretch more, make your hamstrings more flexible, get that back so where you can bend over and make more power. So yoga is a nice little start for that. And it helps, I think, a lot of for us old guys, a lot of the hip opening and strengthening and mobility work, it feels like it puts like 5 or 10 years back on your body.
Yeah, and in a similar vein, I am a big advocate of meditation, obviously, and I think this is a good time of year to start experimenting a little bit with that. We have a little bit more time. We're not training as much. I think developing, even if it's a 10 or 15 minutes a day, a meditation routine, or at least the beginnings of a sort of sports psychology focused practice within your routine can be huge. And I can't speak to the benefits enough about meditation. I think it's a important thing. I still think we should do a podcast talking about it, but
all right,
I mean,
I'm in.
but I think, beginning to just download a meditation app or go to a couple classes or something. Like I think it's going to be the next sort of secret weapon for a lot of, these elite athletes that are doing everything else right. The mind is the limiter in many ways. And so if we can use that to enhance our performance, I think we should do it.
Absolutely. The athletes that I talk with that I can convince or sell on doing meditation always come out better on the other side.
Yeah.
And I'll give you 2 examples. If you get anxious before a race, meditation can help. If you have trouble sleeping at night, which it plagues a lot of athletes, and that cuts into your recovery, and then you can't train as much, and then now you're not making as much power and so forth. So it's a cascade effect. But if you identify that you need to sleep better, meditation can help you.
Or if you are prone to really negative self-talk during races, I can't do this hurts too much, I can't keep this going. Meditation is really helpful with seeing the impermanence in that, seeing that, of just having a little bit of a better, more positive loop going through your mind, so that when you're going through those hard moments in a race, you can, have some more positive self-talk, like you're crushing it, Jackson, or you're doing, you're riding well, or whatever it might be.
You're a cheetah.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Developing that sort of mental narrative to switch from a negative to a positive place. I mean, that's what got me through Steamboat. Like I was by myself most of that day, and I was like, just kept, you're riding really well. Keep it up. You're feeling great. You're strong. Like that is, I just finished the book Endure by Alex Hutchinson. And he talks a lot about this. And so it's like, they've actually studied it, and they've, so
you're talking about a mental skill, like not the physical skill we just talked about. And those skills you can't just turn on. You got to work on it. It takes time. So now would be the time to, start developing your mental skills. Yeah. If you had a race where, you felt like you didn't have the eye of the tiger, that drive, that, fire in the belly, or if you weren't motivated in a certain part of the season, you burnt out, those are all things to also review and ask yourself why, and, what you're going to, do differently.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Take less time off, lift weights. Number 3 training idea to get faster for 2020 is build a bigger base. When we talk about CTL, we did the Masters CTL podcast. Think in terms of increasing your training load 10 to 25%, for example. I mean, we all have an upper limit, and we can't just say, I just want to, train 18 hours a week and get my CTL up to 125. Your body won't let you do that. You have to, for Masters athletes, and I get this question a lot because we have a basic, advanced, and intermediate plan. It's like, I'm 58 years old and I have a job and 3 kids and I'm wondering what training plan to do. It's like basic or intermediate. Advanced doesn't even come into play for, the Masters athlete. And so you're working between 4 and 12 hours per week. How are you going to train consistently? And a lot of your achieving those peak CTLs is all about the timing. And so organize your performance manager chart so the timing of when you hit your peak CTLs, of when you build your big base, is directly in relation to when you want to be your fastest, because you still need to do intervals after that. And you don't want to build up a huge base right before like a road race and not have done any interval work. That's a huge thing. But by and large, in my coaching experience over the last 15 years, if you can get an athlete to build a bigger base over the winter, they're going to have a better season than they did the previous year. So that is always one of my goals for athletes as a coach. And it just comes down to time in the saddle. We talk about TSS and CTL, but time in the saddle. I mean, this goes back to my hard winter training time. That's a no-brainer. I just needed to put more time in the saddle.
And we have plenty of good podcasts about this. Master CTL podcast, TSS training, video.
Yep.
Go back and review some of that stuff because
training camp.
It'll give you some great ideas to drive up that CTL.
Yep.
Put that base going.
That's right. Okay, fourth and final training idea to get faster in 2020, and we'll stop here, is intervals. A lot of people go through the season, they don't do any intervals because they're hard and they hurt and they're painful and they're not pleasant. But if you want to get faster, I highly recommend intervals. VO2s, Tabatas, threshold work, 1 minuters, 2 minuters, sprint. Go hard on your group rides, Strava vols, which we podcasted about. That is a great way to get faster. If you already did a ton of intervals, that's good. Maybe look at doing race-specific ones. Very few athletes do more than enough intervals. It's funny, coaching athletes, everyone will ride longer on the endurance rides. No one ever does more intervals. They're
hard.
They are very hard.
It's another mental hurdle to get over, is just the mental fatigue of doing intervals.
Right.
Even if you're fit enough to do it.
One of the things I did this year that we podcasted about last year is one of my goals for 2019 was to do more intervals. And I did. And, I have to say they made me faster. They're hard, but that's we talk about discarding what doesn't work and keep what does. Definitely going to do more intervals for 2020. I'm going to be on a more limited training time next year. And so when I'm limited on training time, I'm going to prescribe myself more VO2s, more threshold work. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to maybe, raise my CTL as higher. So if you're facing that situation, a lot of times people will, maybe they're going to get a raise at work. Maybe they're going to have another kid. Maybe they're going to buy and sell a home, to put a plan into place to address those challenges that you're coming up, a lot of times can be answered with intervals.
Yeah.
And that's the whole
more bang for your buck.
Time crunched athlete thing.
Yeah.
It can also be more sweet spot as well. So can you think of any other training ideas to get faster for 2020?
Sleep more.
There you go.
I think that's a
recover better.
Recover better in general, I guess. But sleep is the number one. It's the base of the pyramid. Everything else fits in. But I think sleep more. I think today's world, we're just so sleep deprived. Mm-hmm. We're stuck on our devices and technology, and we just aren't sleeping not only enough, but poorly.
Yeah.
And I think especially for the time crunch people and, those of us that are, training hard or, having lots of goals within the season, having consistent good sleep is, I think, a really important piece of all of this.
I couldn't agree more. I work on athletes with this, and that's why I continue to be an advocate of getting the Whoop.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that athletes see right away is I thought I was sleeping 8 hours a night, but I'm only getting 6.5 or 7. And that is next level performance.
Yeah.
Nice. I like it. Well, if you all think of any additional ways to get faster in 2020 and you want to run them by us, please do so. You can do so in the comments and, of course, on our forum where we'll post this podcast. Where else should they reach out to us?
You can send us a comment on YouTube or an email, help@FasCat.
Let's try to cut down on the email.
Yeah. Scrap that. Forum.
That's why we built
place.
Our forum.
Yeah, do the forum.
I would rather spend 10 minutes answering a question, which everyone on the forum can read, than to answer the same question on one-on-one email 20 times.
Yeah.
So let's share everything, participate in our forum. That's all I got for this week.
It's a good one.
Okay. So in the future, going forward, we'll talk about what to do with this review. We kind of alluded to it, the 4 training ideas to get faster, but that will be a part 2 podcast. And if all goes well, next week we'll be speaking with Mr. Cookie Man himself, Phil Gaiman. We're going to be dissecting the Phil's Fondo course in Malibu, California.
Nice.
A lot of climbing. And I was fortunate enough to do the Fondo with Phil a couple years ago. And I know a lot of our listeners will be doing it, and we're going to give you the rundown, kind of like we've done with the Crusher and Oat Root, Asheville, and Steamboat. And this was a listener-generated idea. So we're going to talk with Phil and get the lowdown. I hope, Phil, if we can schedule it properly.
Yeah.
And going forward, we're going to also talk with Coach Jake about the Iceman.
Ooh.
It cometh. Yeah, the Iceman cometh. So Coach Jake, get ready for that.
You haven't told him yet.
No, Jake, we've talked about it, but we haven't scheduled it yet.
Cool.
But with, I guess that's it. I would just say 9 a.m. this Sunday, 3107 Bluff. And we hope to have a good ride with you all. And we'll be at Harlow Platts on Saturday.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening,
Thanks for
everyone.
listening. Great time, great podcast. And do some
FTFP
reflection this weekend.
Yes.
All right.
Peace.